Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we're talking about Lapsis today, which is a film you're very unlikely to have heard of. It's a low-budget sci-fi, written and directed by this guy Noah Hutton, who we were just discovering. He's only about my age, he's a little bit older than I am. But we were just discovering he's the stepson of Arliss Howard, who is not a huge name, but we've seen him in a couple of things. He was Louis B. Mayer in Mank recently. And then you then discovered...
Well, he's the son of Deborah Winger, who Mike didn't know who she was.
No.
But who, of course, any true cinephile would know as the great star and actress of the 1980s in films like Terms of Endearment and Urban Cowboy and An Officer and a Gentleman, real kind of blockbuster films of the early 80s. And, of course, Timothy Hutton, Oscar winner for Ordinary People and so on. But anyway, we didn't know this going in. It's not a reason to have seen the film.
No.
I had never heard of it. It's just something that, Mike pointed out as being interesting. And I did find it interesting.
So did I. So this cropped up on Twitter. I think Matt Zoller Seitz he put out a tweet saying this is good, and because I like this whole world that there is of low budget sci-fi / horror. This isn't a horror, but they're involved. They're tied in a lot of the time. It's where you get a lot. Usually the acting isn't good in these films. I think that's different here. I think this does have good performances, but usually as long as you can look past the acting, there tends to be good ideas in these films. They tend to be quite creative, even if they're rubbish. Like I saw a film not long ago, back when cinemas were open, called Countdown, which was this thing about an app that counts down your life. And then if you try and hack, because most people say, 50 years, and it's fine. And then someone says, 12 days, and they go, no, And so they try and hack it, and then when they hack into the app, it takes time off, and then it turns out there's Latin sort of satanic mass stuff in the code. It's stupid, but still, just an idea that is kind of crazy, and there's a lot of freedom for that in horror and sci-fi of a low budget. This is definitely a step smarter than that kind of thing. And it is a spoilable film, so I'll say what I can without spoiling the plot. This guy, let me get the actor. Dean Imperial plays Ray, who is undeniably a James Gandolfini type.
When I saw it, I thought, is this an old James Gandolfini film initially? Because when you look at him closely, there's almost no resemblance, actually. But there was something about the body posture. The voice seems identical.
Voice is absolutely directly spot on.
So I did wonder. And of course he's not, but he gives a very good performance, I think, this person.
Yeah, so do I. So it's a film about the gig economy to some extent. It really shares a kinship with Sorry to Bother You, the Boots Riley film, and in a more realistic sense, Sorry We Missed You, the Ken Loach film. But it's set in a near future, right? So there's things about quantum computing has come in, and people are being hired to literally drag cables and lay them across all of America, so that this quantum computing network, seems to be like a kind of Google level kind of super entity, can make its money. There's an element of unexplained MacGuffin to it, right? You never really find out what this company's about.
But it has that thing has a resonance because, so for example, I remember being a grad student in Vancouver, and people would earn their keep in a way for the rest of the year by going tree planting. If you went in the forest for 4 months, you could earn enough money tree planting to cover all the rest of your expenses in Vancouver for the rest of the year. Because it was like a hardship pay. You were out in the mountains and so on. So actually, the landscape and the cable resonates with those kinds of. Yeah.
So there's a lot that kind of feels really relatable, and it just removes it one step from real life. But basically, these people are doing the same kind of things that people are doing in real life today. And there's an element of having to rely on your own devices, like this thing about having to use your own smartphone to connect to the GPS to help you. You're constantly being watched as you're walking this cable through the forest. It seems like there are drones getting ready to drop more cable for you. There are these automated robots doing the same job that are chasing you, essentially. And if they overtake you, then you won't get paid. So you have to keep up a certain pace. And what develops is an understanding of a kind of... It would be too much to say it's a conspiracy, because the film doesn't go into enough depth about the details of what these people are up to. what the focus really is on the people who are working for them and an attempt to fight back and assert their human rights, essentially, in the face of this monopoly. So I think the world building is really good, and I think Dean Imperial's performance is a huge part of that, because you feel through him someone being enlightened to this.
Yes.
He goes in not having any understanding or sympathy for the working class or unionisation or anything like that, and he starts to learn it. And I think it's quite organic.
I don't think it's so organic. I mean, it wasn't bothersome to me, but it is one of those things where you see the wheels churning. You know, you do see the Western Union message coming along, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I wish that there had been more of a discovery. I mean, I think the film is a little bit smug in its kind of position. I mean, you know, it's a politics I share and I admire and I'm glad to see circulated. But there is a kind of both, you know, a smugness to its telling, and also you do see the wheels turning. You can see the mechanics of it, yeah.
I think you can, but I think in the performance, what I'm talking about is a kind of... I never felt like the performance or the construction of the character was like didactic.
No, but there's a difference between is it Dean Imperial?
Dean Imperial's the actor.
And the woman whom he meets, yeah, kind of, who's the actress? The blonde, tall woman.
Madeleine Wise plays Anna.
Yeah, because I think that performance is a smug, knowing, let me teach you. It's that kind of character, but then it's not humanized or warmed up by the actress.
No,
you know, so the film has that tone of, you know, let us lead you on to truth, which I kind of resent.
I do know what you mean. I do know what you mean.
Though I'm glad to see it. Yeah, I have this mixed feelings of it, because I'm glad to see it, but really, like, be a bit more humble and be a bit better. Yeah, because actually if the film had more life and drive, it pulsated with other things, you know, you wouldn't have noticed that, you know.
Yeah, and it's towards the end of the film that it started to lose me, and I think it's when it starts to introduce... I think when it starts to actually introduce more drive, this thing about... I guess we're getting into spoiler territory here. This thing about shutting down the automated robots that are threatening their kind of way of life, or their way of life, but their way of working, and their pay. It wants to develop some narrative drive around that, but there isn't enough interest as to the mechanism of shutting these things down or how various plot strands interrelate. So you've got this thing about Ray having his GPS, so his medallion. It's like a New York City cab medallion, right? The thing that gives him the right to be out there working. His medallion, he didn't get to choose his own name. His name is Lapsis. Was it Lapsis Beef Tech?
Yeah, something like that.
Lapsis Beef Tech, and it turns out people know this Lapsis Beef Tech, right? He's this guy who was one of the original cable guys, and he developed he developed new AI for the robots, which make them better, and he's basically become a folk enemy to everyone there. So that's one plot strand, right? Who is this Lapsis? Where did this medallion come from? Why has he got it? You get the thing about the people that he's working for. So Ray didn't go in completely honestly into this business. He was got in there by his friend. His friend wants his 30%. That's not going to happen. There's a thing about an investigation. He gets this huge job for $100,000, which is a lot more than you would get after 2 days doing this job. When he completes the job, he doesn't get paid. And so these various strands, you feel like they're going to cohere, and the film wants to bring them together in a way that it just fails to.
Yeah.
I think maybe it doesn't want to. Maybe it doesn't want to, because it doesn't actually try to do some of them. It does the thing about shutting down the robots and finding out who Lapsis is and going to his shop. So there's this kind of drive for a conspiracy narrative there. But some of the other stuff, it just wants to leave as world building, I guess.
Yes. And I mean, some of the things that it leaves open, how do you explain the end?
I didn't really quite know. It ended in a way that made me think it had 10 minutes to go.
Yes, me too. Yes. So the machines are not quite shut down, or, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was banal. I mean, I'm making it sound... I did enjoy the film, and I think it is a very interesting idea, and I was quite taken with it. But I also thought that it was one of those films that felt thin, and it felt thin image-wise. Yeah, like I don't think the images are carrying enough weight. Yeah, in this film, and it felt thin concept-wise. Yeah, so I mean, kind of, I hear you praising the world building, and I think, well, I think that could have been better. That could have been richer, right? So yes, it's kind of, a world where we're all under surveillance, and it is a gig economy, and it's a world where like kind of everything is being taken away, and even health is now a scam, not only expensive but a scam, but somehow it's not enough. So. What are these children that are living down the hill, and what are they like? And, where does this resistance movement come in? And what are the relationships amongst people? So we see, one of the women who initially brings the protagonist into the game ends up being a resistance person. But what about the other one? And what are the relationships between all of them? And, that's a better film would have done all of that, and this is kind of...
It wants to leave it there as something that you ask questions about and feel, and it's like indications that the world is richer than it's actually executing. What carried me through, because I do share those criticisms, what carried me through is the character of Ray. Because I find him very sympathetic and understandable.
Yes.
He's really legible. You understand what this guy... It starts off with this kind of near future world where he doesn't want this quantum computer. So you have this opening scene where he's double parked. It's alternate side parking, the thing they have in America that we don't do here, where you can park on one side and then the other. And he's parked on the wrong side, and it turns out that the reason he's parked on the wrong side is because he doesn't have the right kind of computer to access the system. So again, you get this thing that is quite relatable of the government or the local authority has set up a system in a way that you need to, it's not easy for you, right? It's not accessible to regular people. But the thing about the character is you get like, he's suspicious of modern technology, right? That's quite a relatable thing. And he's also not very used to it. So as he starts to have to use this, as he takes on the cabling job, he doesn't know how to use his GPS thing. He doesn't know how to pair it. He keeps on needing help. That kind of stuff is really, really relatable and sympathetic. And the way in which the world kind of... It's the world around him and the way he just kind of is trying to make his way through it. That he takes on a job to pay for his brother's healthcare. He doesn't quite understand what his brother's got, but it's something really shitty. I really love the scene where the job for $100,000 comes up on his device, because there's real tension to that, right? He's thinking, what's this job about? And am I going to take it? And then these three other people come and he has to take it as soon as he can, and there was some real tension to that. And now he's got himself into something that, he wasn't necessarily expecting. He's left to fend for himself in these woods. He needs to take advice from whoever he can, and some people are quite hostile to him because he keeps on telling them his username that he shouldn't be doing because they all know this Lapsis guy. So he's the guy who, like, everything that happened to him and the way he handled everything around him, I felt was really believable.
But he's one of the few good things about the film, because actually the more I think about it now, those scenes that you're just mentioning in the woods where other people know who Lapsis is, but he doesn't. I mean, that could have been rendered more successful, more exciting. You could have had kind of moments of humor or danger and violence within them. Yeah, it's kind of like I think the film makes nothing of those, really.
It tries to achieve most of its effects through dialogue, doesn't it? It doesn't do a lot with action. Most of the action is walking and looking at the canopy of trees. I mean, I suppose I quite like the... when he's talking to the girl, Anna, and their GPSs send them on different routes, and you're with him and she's in the background having to go a different way, and he wants to talk to her still, he wants to get closer to her, and as he goes off the route, the GPS says, you're going off your route, get back on your route. So he can't. Again, I think that's quite a clever sort of effective bit of filmmaking where like the job and the surveillance is keeping them from the connection and sharing their information, all that kind of thing. That was a nice bit of...
I have a question for you, because one of the things I really don't understand about the film is actually the main plot point, which is, those machines that overtake them, cabling, and they lose their money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why? So I can understand that disabling that machine is kind of something good to do. But those machines seem to bear a kind of a symbolic weight that is greater than just the thing about the cabling. Yeah. So is it just about the cabling? I mean...
You mean I think within the film, within the context of the film, the threats that the robots pose is the thing about you won't get paid if you don't do your job as good as this 6-legged robot. And what didn't make sense to me about them, and it's a question that the film doesn't satisfactorily answer, is what the use to this overarching company is of having these robots and the people. Because at one point, your main character does ask, why don't they just have the robots then? Which is such an obvious question to ask. And she says, well, the robots sometimes get stuck, they can't get over this, that, and the other, so they have people as well. But the question it then doesn't answer is, why do they have you compete with them, right? And on like a higher level, where you're looking at the film as analogy and metaphor, it makes sense, right? Like the company is basically treating people the same as robots, and kind of stripping you of your humanity. It's making your job into this time trial, which again I think relates to it's something very relatable to things like the gig economy, where we saw in Sorry We Missed You, the thing about making all of your deliveries on time, and if you don't do that, you don't get paid. And these are very real things that people have to handle in the gig economy. But the way that's turned into an analogy in this film doesn't quite make sense in context.
No.
It's just not integrated well enough. It's not made sense enough of, because it says, no, we do need humans because the robots can't do this, that, and the other. But it never shows you a robot organically failing to do its job, right? It shows you the people trapping them and forcing them to fail. But it doesn't make enough sense. Ultimately.
No, it doesn't. So I didn't mind seeing it. I kind of enjoyed it. And I like films that are about ideas. And this is a film that is, about ideas that are worth talking about. And it also has a left politic, I would say, or a liberal politics. Not too left, but left enough.
It's a politics that in America counts as left.
Yeah.
I think.
So
basic ideas of unionising, of fighting against the powers that be that control you through their money and power and monopoly.
So I appreciated all of that. I just wish it had been better.
Yeah, so do I. I guess I make kind of allowances for films of low budget and small production, because I do think its strengths are in the writing and performance. Writing in the dialogue sense. I mean, maybe I want more from the way it tries to bring its ideas together, or fails to, or doesn't want to try.
I think the film's been lucky in the actors it's attracted. Let's put it that way. I do think even a low budget film, if I think, for example, compared to Weekend, that I don't know cost £30,000 or whatever, there's just so much imagination and control. In films like that. So,
What's Weekend?
It's a British gay film about two men who meet one night in Nottingham. What happens subsequently. It's kind of filmed with a Canon camera, really low budget.
Is this the thing you watched recently?
No, but it's very similar.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So I watched End of the Century last night, which is a Spanish film. But it's kind of based, you could see the resemblances to Weekend, yeah?
Okay.
So, those are two low budget films. Small character pieces, really. This film could have made up for its budget with more imagination, and actually I would also argue more skill.
Yeah, I think you're right. Its strength is in evoking a milieu, and a society, and a way that society is organised that forces people to work in certain ways, to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. The fact that he can't pay for his son's or his brother's healthcare, he needs to take on a job to do so. This kind of job that's offered, all that kind of thing. That stuff, the building blocks, I think, are quite strong. It doesn't build enough out of them.
That said, I would look forward to whatever
Noah Hutton.
does next, actually.
And Dean Imperial.
Yes, I want to see him. I think he's a star, actually. And he's kind of interesting because in some angles he's very handsome, and he's got a kind of sexy, beefy thing going on, right? But he's kind of bald and a bit fat, and actually it's wonderful to see someone like that. And he's very charismatic with it and attractive with it, and energetic with it. So he livens up,
he does.
kind of the thing.
He reminded me of Patrick Wilson, who was Night Owl in Watchmen, and he's been in loads of other stuff. But like, if you put a beard and sort of shades on Patrick Wilson and gave him James Gandolfini's voice and attitude, that's this guy.
All right. Well, anyway, I hope to see a lot more of him. So I think this is it. We should wrap up. Yeah. So I kind of, I do recommend that people see it, but don't expect too much. But nonetheless, kind of, an interesting perspective and an interesting voice.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Our social media is Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.